February astrology, and this is a Venus day, Venus hour, although Venus is kind of like in the 8th house. Let's begin with a little bit of gratitude. And first of all, we can think about Isis, the goddess, okay? Not a terror organization. Isis, the goddess, yes, she's the goddess of love and war. She is a goddess of beauty, of being comfortable in your own skin, of artistic expression. And she's connected also with the earth, okay, the soil. And this is a little bit of a reminder of who Isis is. That I think is important to kind of contemplate on at these times. And this is the privilege we have when learning astrology and when learning the deities that are connected with every day, with every hour, with every planet, that we get a deeper perspective. Okay, and we can also understand how those names can be called or summoned upon or spoken in behalf of on a mundane level. And do we agree with what's the way that something is being practiced? Because there are many ways to look at things. So much gratitude to Isis, to Venus, goddess of pleasure, but also of justice. Okay? And Venus, as the ruler of justice, is the ruler of bringing things into balance. Okay, to bringing things into balance while considering the equity, okay, of people, of sisterhood, of values, of assets, okay, of material equity as well. Beyond the image, okay, it's both the image of justice. If you know the notion of justice has to be done and be seen, okay, then be seen is Libra, and be done, it's Mars as well, but if you think about the where do we look at the value, the essence of the value, we look at Taurus, and then in Libra we balance between values. Okay, and then we have both the image of justice and appearance and symmetry of the scales, but also and we'll see how that plays out in February, because it will be triggered by a new moon, as well as looking and inspecting at our values essentially. Okay, so it's something to think about, as the ascendant is ruled by this Venus. We have a strong Venus imprint and a reception between Jupiter and Venus at the time of the recording. The midheaven is 5 degrees Aquarius. Moon is conjuncting it in 4 degrees Aquarius, and the ruler Saturn in 4 degrees Pisces. So we have a 10th house moon with 11th house ruler of the midheaven. So let's take a look at February. And a little bit of early beginning. And I like to immediately take a look at the graph, and let's just take an overall look. All the planets are going to be direct as of January 27. So one thing I got covered, all the planets will be direct in the whole February. And this makes it a great month to proceed with things, okay? Perhaps we will find some new beginning elections. Again, if you're watching this today and you can find still an election today, that would be fantastic. I know I woke up in the middle of the night and I realized that there is an election. I won't talk about it right now, and I did something that's I'm very happy, quite proud of, and kind of like, oh, finally she's doing that. So a lot of people have been saying, do that. Finally, she's doing that. And we'll keep that a secret for it to be birthing in the time it sees fit. So, February, what February looks like. And let's talk about the ingresses before we talk about the lunations, because lunations, everybody, we're going to have separate videos. Everybody's going to be talking about them. Let's talk about the month itself. And okay, a couple of ways to do that. I'm looking for ingresses. Can I get ingresses? Okay, we got the sun. February 5, Mercury enters Aquarius, and February 23, Mercury already enters Pisces. So this is where Mercury is moving quite quickly. February 16, Venus enters Aquarius, and Mars, February 13, enters Aquarius. So we're going to go one by one. First is February 5. And this is the first ingress to Aquarius of Mercury. Okay, remember Pluto is already in 0 degrees Aquarius. This giant is doing it on January. Okay, go to my January horoscopes. I did all the 12 signs as well, but also you can watch the video that's kind of like the introductory for that. Mercury ingressing into Aquarius. And I'd like to take a moment, and I don't remember who was the Twitter user that said that they hypothesized that Mercury is actually exalted in Aquarius rather than Virgo. And of course, they got a lot of hatred, both because of the nature of Aquarius and because they brought something new to the table, and they're not Ptolemy, so how dare they? But I'd like to consider this because, yes, Mercury rules Gemini, which is kind of like the jovial joy of living, of being playful. And then we have Mercury as the ruler of Virgo, which is still jovial. It's kind of like the more, I think of it as the teenager, because this guy can write a book, okay? You say, Shirley, what are you talking about? The teenager writing a book? Yes, I'm talking about this. If you think about most of our philosophers, they used to live up until 30 or so. So the first book they would definitely write at the time that we call the teenager. So this is already the author. Okay, it's the same trickster, but more professional and more prolific. Okay, to wherever it takes it. It's the chemist, it's the author, it's the journalist. Okay, it's the professional setting. Of course, Gemini can be a professional as well. But if you think about Gemini figures, I want you to think about Elon Musk. Okay, or even Donald Trump, each in their own placements in Gemini, and both of these guys have this evergreen child quality, evergreen trickster quality. You may like them, you may hate them, and they still do these childish things when they are way above the stage that they were supposed to be doing that. Whereas Virgo can do the same things, but maybe get away with that a little more elegantly and eloquently. Now, Aquarius, I believe it's a very good idea to think, to contemplate about the exaltation of Mercury as not just the signs that it rules, that is Virgo and Gemini, but as a sign where thinking is already going beyond the place of the details, but very likely if you think about thinking about humanity, but thinking about humanity not in just a grand philosophical way, but writing the sci-fi novel that will be a series of patterns and be implemented for a couple of centuries. Okay, that is Mercury Aquarius. It has grand ideas, okay, that will be implemented. It can be a great, it can come with great patterns, because Aquarius is traditionally ruled by Saturn. Okay, yes, we have, when we discovered Uranus, we said, oh, this guy belongs here. And of course, it created a lot of controversy. But before Planet George, we talk about Saturn, and Saturn is the ruler of Aquarius, is the outcast that becomes the dominant, okay? It's the antithetical dialectic movement between Capricorn, the structure and hierarchy, to the decentralized, all-encompassing, but somewhat tyrannical, if you think about science versus religion, okay? At the times where science became to be kind of like an antidote or an antichrist or an anti-structure, then this is Aquarius. Okay, Saturn is the structure outside the structure. Okay, an anarchic system does not have governing, but it doesn't mean that it does not have rule. And eventually, you find that it does have governing. Okay, it just works in a roundabout way. Mercury there is about the contract. So you think about the philosophers of the social contract, okay? They were guiding the age of Pluto in Aquarius. John Locke, okay? Some would say Thomas Hobbes, Rousseau, especially Locke was guiding the Declaration of Independence. Okay, people were reading these guys, and a Mercury Aquarius can be the author of such such a contract. Okay, to write about the contract to do with humanity. This is Mercury Aquarius already. Mercury Aquarius is also dealing with the nervous system of the person and the nervous system of the cosmos. Okay? And also when we talk about trickery, and we talk about tricking the entire humanity, this is also Mercury. So Mercury is also heuristics, yes. There's also children. And the embarking, the ingress of Mercury into Aquarius, there is a giant at the doorway, and that giant is called Pluto, and Mercury is joining Pluto in Aquarius. The combination of the childlike curiosity, the cunning lawyer, the trickster, and the thief, with the hidden that is to be revealed, and power issues and oscillation between extremes regarding to power. This is where both abuse of journalists can happen, but also and eliminations of journalists, as unfortunately as well, of people of the word, of authors, but also the scientist is also a writer. Okay. Another thing that can happen here in this, upon this ingress, is certain revelations, okay, and certain news, because Mercury is news, and so we can have certain news about what is Pluto doing in the sign of Aquarius. So think about scientific discoveries, exposing the way that we have been, the science was hiding from us. And Aquarius is Saturn ruled sign. We're talking about going back to the future. Okay, we are taking our insights both from history and from the future. Okay, there's a play with time there. That's why Uranus is also a compatible planet to discuss when we are talking about the energies of Aquarius. Okay, it's a chaotic play with time, and chaotic does not mean patternless. Okay, it just means a non-linear pattern. It is dynamic in its non-linearity. So this is going to be a time of a lot of things going missing, as well as a lot of things revealed, shocking revelations, shocking news are very likely to be a part of this whole discussion. Mars is applying to conjunct this. So Mars is exalted in Capricorn. So we're going to have some sort of news or hidden news. And hidden news, for example, Pluto rules oils, okay? How decentralized is the oil system? Um, we talk about an air sign here, so we're not talking about the underground so much. One of the things that I look at Dan Waite's Twitter was talking about seeing news about people delivering corpses to space, to bury people in space. That might be on the news more. So kind of like to bury people, Saturn, but in space, to decompose. And there may be some sort of hidden activity with space that we are not aware of, and we're going to be on the news. So depending on where it falls for you is how you're going to meet this. And we also want to think about the sudden discoveries and hidden knowledge about the nervous system. Okay, for example, technology that if I know it just by a husband of a friend before they were even married, and that was very likely more than a decade and a half ago, when we were just sitting and talking, and he was studying engineering, and they were developing a mind reading technology. Again, he explained how you can mind read. If you think about nervous system, they communicate both with each other and outside of each other's frequencies and waves, okay, thresholds of electricity. It is very easily translatable, more so than we think. And so the concept that our technology, our smartphone, Mercury, our electric devices are actually reading those nervous systems and using it, whether to advertisement, for government, for security, for innovation, for coming up with new products, many things. Okay, you can use that to get inspired by the things that people think about when you want to paint a sketch, and you can use that in way more malefic things. And so that technology they were developing at a more than a decade and a half ago, and it was already existing. They were just developing it. You know, this is a case where you talk to the developers. Um, so and completely by chance, was not even an academic situation. She was just dating somebody. A friend of mine was dating somebody. That's what they were doing. That's that. She was a Gemini. He was Aquarius sun. And now they married. They have children and so on. And so we're going to discover that a lot of the technologies that we thought we still need developing are already existing, working, and in action with all the things that these things are doing. Okay? Did you know, for example, if you talk about pharmaceuticals, that there are DNA-based tests that can tell you exactly if a certain drug is going to be good for your DNA. Now you have to understand that there's also corruption revolving this. Okay, there's this conflict of interest. Hello there. There is conflict of interest. Yeah. Hello. There's conflict of interest involved. And you understand that most of you do not go through a DNA test before they bomb you with, I don't know, be beta blockers or whatever, SSRIs, but also drugs to dilute blood pressure, to dilute sugar, cholesterol, okay, and so on and so forth, and the many things that you are being prescribed. Okay, there is a DNA test for that. COVID vaccines, Moderna vaccine, any sort of mRNA, non-mRNA vaccine. Okay, the technology to see how it will affect you exists. It's just not being used, and there is conflict of interest because even if it will be used, who is the manufacturer? What is the conflict of interest? What are the chances for you to get true to the science out of this? So we get in a more very practical, not philosophical, very practical, because medicine is incredibly practical. And the ruler Saturn, ruler of Aquarius, is still in Pisces. We're talking about the who's and whefs. Why also whef? Because Pisces is ruling also liquidity, liquid assets. For me, when Mercury was square in Pisces, the ruler of my fourth, suddenly my landlord called and say, oh, there maybe is a leakage in your place. And that was the releasing of Mercury square Neptune. Maybe there is a leakage, and it's very likely there is leaking, and then they're going to fix that. Okay, so you think about liquidity in both as something leaking, but also liquid assets, the ability for you to move wealth from one place to another, and participate in exchange of goods, of wealth, of options, of stocks. That is liquidity. Okay, it's not a fixed asset, it's not a saving, it's something that you can easily transmute. And so when we talk about scientific discoveries, revolutions, and their implementations, we are dealing with the Mercury, Pluto, Aquarius with Saturn in Pisces. So you can expect it to be marine biology related, ocean related, the effect of the pollutions on water and air, okay, the effect of water pollution on climate change. We are going to be beginning to discuss these things. And of course, you think about the bigger technology, kind of like the AI stuff, but also communication with aliens. Well, with Mercury, it's more about an applied science. Okay, it's not a Jupiter, but more like an applied science. And this is Mercury also rules vehicles, so a vehicle moving in air. Saturn structure in Pisces, kind of like a liquid structure. Think about liquid robots and stuff like that. So stuff that is hidden and stuff that is exposed around this. Okay, those are kind of like my predictions. And then it's too soon to talk about like what has manifested since January. I have to watch my own videos. I don't remember. But you can write in the comments if you see something. Another thing that I kind of want to discuss about this Mercury, okay? It is already entering the bisextile. Uranus is going to be retrograde, Neptune retrograde. Now, yes, Uranus is 19 degrees Taurus. It's not exactly, 29 degrees or 0 degrees Gemini. But I want you to already begin to think about this Mercury incorporated in a bisextile. And this bisextile between Pluto in Aquarius, Neptune in Pisces, and Uranus in Taurus is beginning to perfect towards 2026. These are outer planets, okay? It's not far-fetched to think about we are in the bisextile. We are in it, okay? And this Mercury is going to apply to sextile Neptune and separate from a trine to Uranus. You want to check my videos on the bisextile to understand more of what it means. But this is already a personal planet that is in a hard aspect with Pluto, but is sextile in Neptune and separating from a trine to Uranus. Uranus in Taurus. Okay, Uranus in Taurus kind of emphasizing the importance of sensual pleasure, joy, the Venusian, so both the artistic expression, the fertility of the land, and the fertility of people with wombs or women or trans women as well, in a more kind of a holistic level, and how that is relevant to the nervous system, to higher technologies. Okay, how do we launch from Earth, balance our nervous system on Earth, then we can launch to Venus. Then we can launch to other cosmic places. If we vivify Earth, we already understand a lot about how we vivify Venus, that used to be habitable by human beings, and how the nervous system, our ability to connect. Also, when we talk about flying vehicles, we're talking about how do birds fly, okay? It's this interconnectedness of the nervous system that is allowing things to not collide into each other. And how do we blend in to the intergalactic nervous system, or to the sky on Earth? All of those things are the integration of Uranus Taurus. Okay? It's not just radical views and radical values, it's also quite important scientific developments that are deriving from the wisdom of the earth, so we can lift off. Okay. Uranus reminds us that to touch ground is important in balancing our nervous system. And if we get that now, we might avoid a lot of the pitfall of this scientific revolution. Okay, so that is one thing to consider. As to Neptune, then again, we are talking about liquid acids, the ocean life, the karma associated with how we've been polluting the oceans, and how that affects the climate, how what's going on Earth affects other planets as well, hidden mysteries of the sea and scientific revelations of the sea. Okay, so it's kind of like we connected the air with the sea, so we get a storm or we get a tsunami. Doesn't mean that a tsunami is going to happen, more like we discussed that. We discussed the what is the underlying mechanism of that. So it's bringing in the childlike curiosity to these world events. Now let's go to the next ingress, and the next ingress is actually on February 13th. This is Mars, and Mars also enters Aquarius. Okay, so remember the stellium that we began to have in January, okay, with Mars, Mercury, Venus, and Pluto in Capricorn, and then, okay, Venus is later, but and now we are having this same stellium just progressing on to Aquarius. Okay, and stellium, it brings in an axis into attention. Okay, January was the cardinal axis of Capricorn, Cancer, Aries, and Libra. Then right now we are talking about the fixed axis, so particularly Aquarius, but also Leo, Scorpio, and Taurus. Okay, because this is an entire X that is emphasized here. And when you have, for example, natally, if you had a stellium in Aquarius, you could possibly be balancing it with expressing Leo qualities. Okay, so it works, it enlightens an axis, because to balance yourself out, you turn to the other polarity. I knew a person that had a stellium in Capricorn. They really liked to cook. Okay, and when they would get stressed at work, they would just cook. Okay, and I really enjoyed being being their friend at the time. Okay, definitely got the benefits from that. And of course, we associate this cooking and nourishment with Cancer, and that's kind of like a distressing activity of cooking. So if you think about the stellium in Aquarius that we're going to be having this February, you understand that Leo is also going to play out. Okay, so again, performative expression, intelligence, inspiration, ego. And ego is just, it's kind of like you're walking on the face of this earth with your heart open, vulnerable, unable to close. Okay, it creates an ego. This is the ego of Leos. We will call them, they're narcissistic, they're this, they're that. They're open, walking with the heart open, unable to close it. Okay, that explains the weird behavior that unfortunately can undermine them, because it can cause them to hurt somebody else. Okay, and then it can backfire, so now they're hurt again, but it cannot close their heart, so it's an overwhelm. Whereas the polarity of Aquarius is more like the detached, the airy quality, the thinking about this, okay, I think where I should feel kind of vibe, and dealing with structures, with the bigger picture, with humanity, with sociology, rather than, it's not even psychology, but more like the personal, okay, the personal, delving into getting to know oneself versus and being of inspiration to others versus being isolated from society, so that you can in some ways participate it for as long as you need to. And it's all more about information, ideas that benefit humanity, and everybody has kind of like a win-win around that, hopefully. So next up is Mars. February 13, Mars ingresses into Aquarius and meets Pluto. So Pluto is still sitting pretty in the 0-degree Aquarius. It's in no hurry to get anywhere. It's got 2 decades in Aquarius, and it's still got some time to spend back in Capricorn. So it moves slowly. And the Mars, as it enters the doorway, it meets the great giant. And so we are entering, and yes, it's important to mention that this is an opening of a fuga. Okay, the first voice, Mercury conjuncts Pluto, a new cycle of Mercury-Pluto. It's going to accompany us for the rest of 2024. Again, some of 2025 even. Mars begins another fuga, another voice in the fuga. Okay, the fuga structure, you want to think about Bach. I think about Douglas R. Hofstadter's Gedalia Bach, and the structure of the fuga from Bach, where you have one voice playing, then a little bit after that, the second voice, and a little bit after that, the third voice, and this is a fuga. And so the other second voice, the second synodic cycle that closes and opens up in February is the Mars-Pluto. Okay? And again, with synodic cycles, we want to pay attention to the themes, because they're going to accompany us for the entire cycle. And you want to check my 2024 as a fuga series of videos here on my channel, where I begin to pay attention to each of these synodic cycles and see the interlaying themes of them. So Mars, Pluto, yes. Mars is exiting the place of exaltation and entering Aquarius. It isn't that Mars is uncomfortable in Aquarius, okay? It's not in detriment. It's not weak in Aquarius. It's still Saturn rules sign. Mars is action, innovation. Okay, I hear about Mars is like, this is aggression, this is war, this is invasion, this is inflammation. All of these things are true. But we also forget it rules over Scorpio, yes, and it rules over Aries, and Aries rules over the new in the head of the baby, innovation. So it rules over both the psychological necessity, Scorpio, and the innovation that comes with this mother necessity, and that is Aries, so the new. And so when we talk about the futuristic society, a technological society, remember we're talking about back to the future. Yes, Aquarius is the programmer and hacker that can penetrate the entire, political system all at once, but hold a Casio watch and refuse to give it up and not hold a cell phone. Okay, it's the conjoining of and if you think about it, this is what allows that. It's the ability to be isolated from technology, as well as to think in grandeur, being able to look back in history and apply it to future times. And this is where the innovation on the structure is also coming from. And so if you want to hack the entire system, you need to be able to walk with a Casio watch that has no radiation whatsoever, that is on a Wi-Fi length, and so on and so forth. And that is also Aquarius, okay? Because I get a lot of, the other people say, oh, Uranus cannot be associated with Aquarius, it is Saturn. Look how they can't stand new things, they can't stand technology. Yeah, but if you think about what they are doing, you understand that they are creating a future of something while being isolated from the minuscule technological innovation of these times. Okay, it's the sci-fi writer that doesn't hold a camera, because it still paints. Okay, and it will paint its things, but it will write a sci-fi novel of the future. Yeah? That's the dissonance that goes with Aquarius. It goes both with Saturn and with Uranus. And Mars is the action of the innovation. Okay, very well. And the co-presence with Mercury, excellent. So you think about developing new things. You think about the active trial and error. You're thinking about getting somewhere. It's also penetrative, so penetrative insight, penetrative to security systems, hacking, and so on and so forth. Can bring back kind of like, what about the mission to space? Do we have pictures, Mercury from Mars? Okay. And we're likely to have them. Mars, Pluto, when they come together, and they both are associated with Scorpio, is Mars penetrates Mars penetrates the Pentagon. It's very much kind of like Mars conjunct Pluto, because Pluto is something that is hidden until it is revealed. Okay, and in the age of Pluto sextile Neptune, which has been for the last more or less a century on and off, we're talking about leakage of confidential information, security information, highly secured stuff, spying, and so on and so forth. It's just the spirit of the time. So it's difficult in this century to completely isolate Pluto from Neptune. Mars enters again the domain of the bisextile. Okay? So things of Mars going missing, as well as, oh, it's Mars here. Okay, Pluto saying, oh, look, there is a Mars here. Neptune, there's a Mars here. You know, from 500 years ago, you forgot, and Mars is like an atheist academic that just comes to, I don't know, have a discussion with some hackers, and you know, some Neptunian figure in the room tells, hey, you forgot here 500 years ago, you had this pocket knife. Okay, what you now call a pocket knife. Okay, look, that's you dropped it. That's not mine. Okay, the Uranus comes in, and Mars is separating from a trine to Uranus. Uranus is in Taurus. Okay, so think about the soil of Mars. Oh, we got a way to grow agriculture of Mars. Did you send the seeds to Mars? Mars like, the what? The seeds. Did you receive the seeds that we sent you? We want to grow saffron on the soil of Mars. Okay. And so Mars enters a hard aspect with Pluto, because Mars is usually the penetrative, inquisitive, so and so, but now Mars is being inquisited in as much as it is inquisiting. Okay, think about the Scorpio archetype, where people are not like the retrogrades like me. And the Scorpio archetype is kind of like, ask many questions, but don't say anything about yourself. Well, Mars enters Pluto, and Pluto is like, hey, you hear this guy has a ta 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 ta, and Neptune, of course, leaks all the information, and Uranus scatters it around. Okay, so any confidential agent, security agent, military security, names like Mossad, Shavak, people are probably going to pop up. And they're if I think about right now, we have like the Haag thing. I don't know where it's going to go. I'm kind of waiting for the Who versus the Haag, the WEF versus the Haag, like something interesting. And so people think about like Mossad or Shabak. Will we see these guys? I haven't been watching the ICGC, JC, and maybe, maybe there's some stuff going to come up, some names. Now they have to be testifying. Now they have to answer questions. The people that ask people questions all the time have to be standing in front of a camera, okay, co-present with Mercury, and answering questions. It would be way more interesting if we would get like these people being inquisited by the people kind of like with people, who people, having to answer questions. And it's not impossible that it will happen, but this is where Mars, the one who penetrates the information, is now being put on in a certain situation where it has to answer some questions. Okay. And if Mars is not used to this type of interrogation, then that can be totally exposing and totally inconvenient to the archetype. Mars is also being informed by Pluto. Okay, like I said, it's kind of like to penetrate the Pentagon, because and this is where Mars is kind of like a child in a candy shop with both the pros and cons of that, because you think about Mars is the youth, okay, a child, teenager, a curious person. It matures at 28, and you think about where you always wanted to go, and now you arrive there, the door is open, and somebody left the keys inside the keyhole. Okay, So you think about it like, I always wanted to go there. You arrive and the door is open. And you can walk inside the place. And of course, you are curious, but you're also being observed. What are you going to do? Okay. And you think maybe I can keep this hidden, maybe this, maybe that. It's kind of like going through a kind of a transformation where Mars is being informed of way deeper things that it wanted to discover. Okay, you think about wondering, should I read this diary of this person? Should I log on to the computer of this person? And now you see stuff, and they can be fascinating stuff, but it can also be highly taboo stuff. Um, and you definitely expose secrets. Now, what are you going to do with these secrets? Well, it's too late, because while you're just thinking about it, Neptune is already leaking the information, and every thought that's going through your head is now on the news, with Uranus scattering it around across lands. Okay, that is more like the spirit of this synodic cycle. Mars, yes, it does rule weapon as well. And I want you to think about the scientific concept of weapon, okay? You think that this is highly confidential security information, and then you got a kid on, I don't know, Rumble, explaining how this patent could probably have been created, kind of like exposing all of your secrets just by common sense. Okay, so what you thought is secret is no longer secret. What you thought is everybody knows is being classified. Okay, so the classification of trying to cover up military action and inquisitive action. Mars is also assets, and yes, Mars Pluto is a hard aspect. We can absolutely expect a financial crisis that is in very particularly a fiscal crisis, an interest crisis, and a real estate crisis. Now, and I want you to think about real estate, not just the house that you're living in, but also the Pentagon is a real estate. I'm getting a lot of Pentagon here. I don't know why. I don't know if it's like predicted or something. We're going to see something around the Pentagon. Because I'm like, oh, Pentagon, I'm thinking back. Okay, but why am I thinking back? And like all these hackers, there was this hacker that hacked into the Pentagon, and then he was in jail. And I'm like, but it can't be that I'm getting all this Pentagon, or something's going to happen there. I have no idea. Like we all are a nervous system, so we're channeling all the time. So yeah, who knows? But definitely, if you want to think that the structure and the land that the Pentagon is sitting on is a real estate. To whom does it belong? Who funds it? It's probably not the United States. Okay? And those things are going to be also a topic. If you talk about real estate crisis, we're not just talking about like the big banks or your housing or your office. We're talking about the buildings that the government is sitting in, that the weapon who is sitting in, Geneva, the ICDC in Hague. Okay, there is a discussion amongst Netherlanders from many, from all kinds of like origins, mixed origins. And one of them was like telling an Israeli person who lives in Netherlands, kind of like, hey, don't blame the Netherlands for what's happening in The Hague. The Hague is in Netherlands, but it's an international court. It's not a Dutch court. Okay, and all of these things are relevant on the kind of like juristic level, who is responsible for whom, but also when we think about the real estate, to whom does this real estate belong to? Okay, and Mars is definitely thinking about this. Now, the ruler of the entire Geschäft is still in Pisces. Okay, And Pisces is about liquid assets, it's about healing, it's about structures, Saturn structures of healthcare systems. Okay, and now we're talking about the global stuff, global structures of healthcare system. And I just saw a post on Facebook of an Israeli mother bringing bringing a document they got from the child, and it portrays all kind of pornographic activity. What do boys like? What do girls like? Kind of like very vulgar language. And this is a child, okay, that comes back from school, not even a teenager. It's just what happens to healthy sexuality, how to, I don't know, put a condom, like what happens to the hormonal system, like what happens to sexual education these days. And I realized that this is a part of like the international basically the international program to get children to experience sex. I'm not joking. And to get them to sleep with adults. Okay, but I repeat again, when Ehud Barak was convicted as being a client of Epstein, he did not deny that he slept with children. He just went, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay? And so we're definitely going to be seeing that in Mercury's children, okay? People beginning to see that being applied. So all of those global programs, global WHO programs, global WEF programs, we're beginning to see their applications. And so people now, it's not some immigrant's child, it's not the Yemen children, it's not, and by the way, only today with all this conflict, only today I realized that in Israel we cannot do DNA test or kind of like the 23andMe. Probably has to do with the kidnapping of the Yemenite children, and that would probably be proof of that. But it's not only the Yemenite children, and it's not only Israel, it's global. So this was really surprising to me. It's like, well, it's true that globally we have this issue of kidnapping children by the welfare. It happens in Norwegian, happens in the best kind of like Nordic countries, happens in the US. So why is it only in Israel that we cannot have this genetic tests? So this is kind of like, yes, I have to admit as an Israeli that is very weird. I didn't know that. And so why is the particularity? Because this is a global issue of kidnapping children. It's not in particular to Israel, but why in Israel we cannot have genetic tests is very weird. And so it's kind of like, hey, as a citizen, I have to admit that I find this very weird. Okay? People say, and this is also where on a mundane level we get the more humanity. Okay? There are the things that are concerning with humanity. Okay? Using sexual violence as in a political conflict is not something that happened for the first time in the 7th of October. Okay, we know this from, unfortunately, every conflict. We know also the Pfizer stories that their Viagra was used in this way in the Arab Spring, and unfortunately probably also in Ukraine, and very likely also in the 7th of October. So we talk about stuff that all across the board we want to abolish, okay? That all across the board we want to abolish. And this is a part of what's going on as well. We think that on a humanitarian level, on humanity level, we want to abolish poverty, to abolish sexual violence, but we also see people that want to enforce pedophilia and normalize it. I'm not talking about pedophilia as a sexual attraction to children. I'm talking about people having, basically raping children. This is what it means, okay? It's molestation. And to normalize molestation after all the efforts made to raise awareness that people who went through molestation, even in ancient cultures, in Inuit cultures, are the highest suicide rates in the globus, okay? And have the Inuit have the throat singing and relaxing the throat to heal that, but we also need to interfere in the reality of molestation and incest, because the result is basically highest suicide rates in the entire globe, okay? For culture that has so many rich things to offer to the world, and is dealing with that bravely and speaking up about it, at least in Canada. So now we hear that like globally they want to normalize and to legalize and to encourage molestation of every child. Okay, now it's not some indigenous child in some Eckwelt. It is Tom, Dick, and Harry's child. It's Henk and Ingrid's child. It's Israeli's child. Okay? And I don't know the equivalent in other cultures, but this is something that more and more people are going to wake up and say, oh, this is wrong. At the same time, there are going to be more and more people say, where were you in the last couple of centuries? Mars is this collision. This is a nuclear collision that is being licked, and unfortunately that can also manifest as just what I said. Okay, it can also be absolutely like a nuclear collision of some sorts. We don't see Procyon on the line. Okay, I'm not saying there's going to be like a nuclear disaster, but it's not impossible. Volcanic eruption, perhaps, but this is more in air. If you think about the collision in air that is nuclear, you think about dropping a nuclear bomb. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying it's not impossible. The ruler Saturn is in the ocean. It's more likely that it's not like going to drop. If I think about the Houthis and kind of like the Suez stuff, and now US is bombing Yemen, but it's bombing the capital city of Yemen, okay? And so that's kind of like the overkill, but you know, the capital city, there are not just Houthis living there, but also Yemeni people. And so while Israel is being accused of a genocide in Gaza, the United States bombed a capital city of a country that has provoked its rage. I'm not saying any A bomb is going to drop, but it's not impossible for something to be dropping like in Suez Canal, and then of course that pollutes the entire globe pretty much. And we know the implications, but we also know the desire to reduce and depopulate the earth, so it can be way too convenient to people who think that they can live 70 years in a bunker, no problem. And, you know, having a couple of experiences in rooms in NASA does not make you able to live 7 decades without sunlight, without proper nutrition, without your feet stepping on the soil, or without a balanced nervous system. And Pluto here, the bisextile, is also about this. So again, I'm not saying some bomb is gonna drop. It's very likely some banks are going to say bye-bye. I have seen that. I remember I talked about Kawasaki. I call him Kawasaki all the time. And the thing is, he's in a, I think, 12 trillion debt. The guy that wrote Rich Guy, Poor Guy, he hangs around with Trump, and sometimes they have the same facial expressions. So, which is very interesting because they come from such different backgrounds, and it's very interesting to see these people having the same manners. Just as an observation. So he said something very true that we all must listen to. And I talked about this in January, but it's going to be still relevant when Mars is going to ingress to Aquarius. And that is, he said, I'm in such a great debt. I don't care about this at all. If I lose like my, if I fall apart, the entire bank is falling apart. Okay, and he's almost, you can almost hear the smile beneath the pages of the paper that you read in your cell phone, when he says that. And so you think about the intricate relationship between the investor and the investment company and the trust and the bank. And so the entire bank is going to collapse if he just doesn't get his debt returned. If the guy's invested in real estate and you get the intellectual properties as a daughter of an author, intellectual properties are not all that granted as well, and are not all that accessible. It's just a lot around it. People usually write books to establish themselves as a person of authority or for the sakes of legacy. In this world, is currently not celebrated as something that can make or break your financial lives. Not today. It can change. Intellectual property is going to be big. Pluto Aquarius is definitely intellectual property. Okay, think about patents. But you also think about writing like a sci-fi novel and stuff like that. It's definitely intellectual property of all shapes and sizes and ways. So it's going to be big. But when a businessman tells you, okay, yes, the book has not been covering all of my debts. I am in debt. I encourage people to take debt. It's no problem, because if I fail, the entire bank collapses. It's not my problem. Okay? And so, yeah, this is true. And it's very likely to begin to happen as of January 27. Okay? The guy primes you. These people don't say something without being intentional about it. And so they prime you that all of these people that have been invested in debt are going to withdraw from attempting to cover this debt. But this is also an intricate relationship between the investor and the banking system that requires, okay, the banking system makes money from the interest on debt and from reinvesting the money. Okay, you see, it's kind of like a snake eating its own tail, and we're no longer in the snake year, we're in the dragon year. I don't know Chinese astrology. Okay, so the one detail that I learned that we are in the dragon year is much to do with kind of like bringing into justice and kind of like it's, you know, the symbolism of the dragon. That of course is very varied and is more to look into it. I'm not a Chinese astrologer, but we are at the year of the dragon. It's no longer the snake that is sitting its own tail. We're breaking through from that, and the bubbles are now collapsing. Okay, Pluto Neptune is also a big bubble, and Uranus kind of pokes in this bubble, but the people who have been creating these bubbles are not necessarily going to suffer the consequences. It's just the way you and I are expected to pay for this, and to pay not in money, but in our buying power, our accessibility to clear water, to food, to resources, and expectancy, life expectancy. Okay, it's that kind of debt. So this is Mars, and it's another synodic cycle that is opening with the crisis. February 16, we got Venus ingressing into Aquarius. So now we're going to have, yes, the sun that has been there since the end of January. Okay, we started out with the sun, and then Mercury came in, and then Mars hopped in. We start also with Pluto, and now Venus is at the gate. So Venus comes from Capricorn. She is highly practical, highly informed. She climbed all the stairs to the top of the pyramid. And now she steps at the gate of Aquarius, okay, of other worlds, of space, of big technologies, of humanitarian considerations, of grand ideas of sci-fi becoming science, becoming applied science, of the car that you wrote about when you were 5 becoming the car that you're driving to Mars with. And now she enters the gate of Pluto. And again, Pluto is still sitting pretty on 0 degrees Aquarius, not hurrying to anywhere. And it's kind of like a little bit of a gatekeeper, except that anybody can come in. They're just going through a transformation. Venus is up next. Venus. Values as well. Expression, relations. Talk about cars, absolutely. Vehicles, connecting us from one place to another. Artistic expression. Venus is the ruler of the scales, also justice system as well. Okay, Mercury is the trickery of justice system. Venus is the balancing between values, okay, values and balancing between values. Symmetry, morality, okay. All of that is both transformed and leaked and exposed. Okay, anybody who has art that they've been invested in, confiscated artistic investments, the juristic system exposed. Okay, what do you expect is going to happen to these guys sitting in the Hague? All of them, one by one. How many pedophiles there are there, how many war criminals there are there, how many sex offenders there are there, how many drug traffickers, how many human traffickers there are there, what pictures do they watch. Okay, this is how a court is ran. Okay, you basically, kind of like the UN, you have a shit list, and you can imagine that Israel is going to have that shit list. It's going to be exposing that shit list, especially it's going to be cornered in. So a lot of people are preparing their popcorn to see what the dirty secrets of the judges, male and female and in between, of the ICJC are. Definitely, we'll see stuff. Okay, if a country's been cornered in, and this country has intelligence and has this and has that. So we'll see calculative exposure, but Neptune is about surrender. So certain things are fated to be revealed. And here it can be about relational misconduct, and it can be about the type of art that they consume, or where do they consume their art from. Okay, Venus Pluto is about money and power and sensuality. Okay, not sex, that's Mars, sensuality. Okay, and so what do they find sensual, and how does money changes hands? Is there exploitation of that which is the sensual or the sensuality for wealth? And this is a very tricky kind of subject because there is an act such as wealth changes hands in sensual relations. You think about even marital or committed relations, or even dating people, okay, kind of buying flowers, and showing up your interest and investing in the other person. Also fiscally, it kind of show up that you desire to bring your side of the relation also materially into the union. Okay, and then there are all kinds of other stuff. Okay, and this is very tricky because it can both be seen as people trying to seduce other people. And I remind you that seduction in these places happens with children. A 16 years old young maiden is like a granny for what these guys are looking for. So if you're thinking about the seductive bitch that tries to get her way, there is more to understand about these things. And and at the same time, those issues of money and power and relations and heuristics and connections and beauty are going to be revealed in some way. One of the people that we had on Epstein's client list was a scientist, okay, disabled scientist, and people can raise a lot of questions, okay, and so we're talking about pedophilia, okay, we're talking about sleeping with children, we're not even talking about like sex work or something like this. And so a lot of the connection, we may find certain connections between human traffickers and judges and scientists, and even hackers, okay, or people in the healthcare system. Some such connections are going to be exposed, and are going to be key women figure involved in this. So we think about, if you think about the scandals of the women presidents of Howard, I know in own locals, not my own, fortunately, but a local a scandal that has to do with children, has to do with main key figures that are actually women, so judges, so psychiatrists, psychologists, police investigators, and whatnot, social workers, no, welfare workers, and there are a lot of women at the front that are very, very, very corrupt, as in Hebrew they say lichora, okay, so it's kind of like supposedly corrupt. That is being addressed, and there's also a funding that is funding, giving grants for people who study law. It's called Waxman Foundation. That's also kind of like under interrogation. So kind of like those kind of big things. So if you look at science, the application of science in the court, the political system, the academic system, but also law enforcement and and corruption. Okay, this is just the opening gate, and I kind of like that we're going to have, okay, Sun conjunct Pluto in Aquarius. We have it already in January 21. And then we're going to have Mercury conjunct Pluto, and then Mars conjunct Pluto, and then Venus conjunct Pluto, all in the same month. And this is a good thing because Pluto is at the doorway. Pluto itself is just looking into the realm of Aquarius. And then there are all these personal planets. So you think about this gatekeeper, but it's also kind of like gate informer. And everybody walks in and like, you won't believe what's in there. What's in there? Well, does that guy go with that guy and go with that guy and go with that guy? But isn't that guy a kid? Yeah. Some of them are kids, and the rest of the guys, they're like older people, and look what they do together, and they say it's aliens. And so then another comes in, you won't believe what's going on here. What's going on here is that, oh, you're a real estate investor. Yes, yes, absolutely. I'm a real estate investor. I say, oh, the bank is the problem of the bank. Do you work with the trust? No, I don't work with the trust. Oh my God. Okay, and then Venus comes in. Hello, pretty lady, how are you? That's sexual harassment. Well, it's what I've heard is you've been sexually harassing that attorney underneath you. Yeah, I know, because the guy that the real estate investor told me. Okay, what you got to say about that? Okay, that is kind of like the ingress, and all of us are going to be quite informed about a lot of this, so we get it's kind of like a cultural shock from Pluto in Aquarius right from the get-go. Okay, so all of these and Venus is opening her synodic cycle with Pluto. All of this is happening as the moon is trining that from Taurus. So yeah, it's going to create quite a big impression, and it's going to take some time to process all of this. Okay, there's a stellium going into Aquarius, but Pluto is at the doorway, and you won't believe this crazy place. And every one of the personal planets comes in and is being inquired and inquisited, but also being informed and stuff. Pluto is a generous provider of information. And I want you to think about Switzerland suddenly exposing the name of every investors that they had in their list to the state of Israel. One of them was a past CEO of Leumi Bank, one of the greatest banks in Israel, supposedly, if I remember correctly, and yada, yada, yada. And it's kind of like very generously providing this information. Okay, and so there's just something about Pluto. It can keep private things for a while. Yeah, keep your secrets, is no problem. You ask them where the money, they say what money. But then when it comes to reveal the secrets, they can generously reveal your secrets as well. And this is something you need to know in the age of Pluto-Neptune. Okay, it's the spy as much as the confidant is kind of like a spy here, and that is having its pros and cons. Now, enough about Aquarius. What about Pisces? Well, February 23, Mercury enters Pisces. And this is happening when Mercury is applying to conjunct the Sun. So another cycle is about to be open, and this is the cycle of Mercury and the Sun. Will we have a cazimi or combustion? I don't know. You can write in the comments below if you have something to comment on this. And it's not doing very much other than conjoining the Sun. Is very likely to be invisible. Again, we talk about visibility in the sky. We actually have to look. Will it be visible in the sky? It's not just the degrees away from the Sun. I think the teachings of Prasya Tassio for that. So there's going to be a vicinity between Mercury and Sun in Pisces. Mercury Pisces is very much like the artistic expression. It's the communication that cannot be done with words unless you find some poetic way to express some very ambiguous but also very real dimensions of reality that are not usually exposed. Tremendously great time for artistic expression, for reading poetry, for trying to verbalize that which is beyond words, and trying to say with colors and with art and with music and with energies and with drugs. Also what we usually try to say in words but can't. And so Mercury Pisces can also be drugged children. So we might have some news about that, or contracts, legislation, something happening in that arena. This happens February 23rd. Now, before we look at kind of like the great aspects, yes, Sun enters Pisces February 19th. So this is a little bit before Mercury. Sun ingresses into Pisces. Pisces season, Moon is going to trine from Cancer. Growing Moon. Some nice time at the beach, but then, Saturn is in Pisces. So it's a co-presence there. Now let's talk about lunations a little bit. So first up, and we already addressed it in the new moons, is the lunation in February, 10th February 2024. 20 degrees Aquarius, not too far. The moon will later apply to Dana Balgeti, but this is squaring a 19 degrees Uranus in Taurus. Okay, so 1 degree release from the square. Venus is separating from a trine with the same Uranus in Capricorn. So remember January, where Venus was or is now applying to square Neptune. February is where Venus gets to experience the trine to Uranus and the sextile to Neptune. Okay. Also, Mars experiences the sextile to Neptune. So we can get practical action in a place that is actually benefic for us, and when kind of like a eureka, a resolution. But the new moon itself, it opens with a crisis. There's the rebellious crisis of some sorts. There are, and I think about the fields of science, especially medicine, where the wisdom of the body, okay, when a person or patient tunes to their own body and have like a clear cognizance about their situation versus the doctor, the shaman, the healer, the authority in the field of medicine, all kind of like the medicine of the people that are kind of like the earth witches. But also, do you notice where you go somewhere, you get a feeling that there's just something on with you, and the doctor tells you no, and you gotta feel there's something on with you. You say maybe it's psychotic, maybe it's maybe you're imagining, maybe it's psychology. And you feel that there is also something physical there. You're not sure what it is. It's difficult to diagnose, but you got a little bit of an intuition there, and so you have to kind of find your own way around getting to treat that, or you can have a clear cognizance around stuff to do with your health in general, okay, mental and physical. And again, it can be in front of the HMO as well as in front of the shaman and the healer. Okay, some shamans and healers say, oh, you really need to change your belief system, and then you will have improvement, and so on and so forth. This is why you keep experiencing this. Well, you see, there's something more to the issue sometimes. It doesn't cover the entire fabric of reality. Okay? For example, telling to a person that went through prolonged violence, oh, you probably keep blaming your situation on external reality instead of finding the power within you, where the prevalence of chronic fatigue and chronic helplessness is something that you have to be like a superhero for this not to happen. So instead of making it more accessible for a person to find inner strength or inner power, it usually means that they also have to have a housing first and have the feet on the ground, their ground. Okay, that can be that sort of conflict. Okay, because Saturn is in Pisces, so science of health. And Venus in Capricorn can be, it's a very weird. It's very weird, I have to admit, because the ruler of this rebellious Uranus is kind of at the sign of hierarchies that is also ruled by Saturn, that is in Pisces. So there's a practical discussion about health. It can be kind of like a global discussion of like pandemics and so on and so forth. That's the spirit of this new moon, and it's very medical. Okay, it's very medical. Can do with organized crime, trafficking, drugs, stuff like that. Big pharma, stuff like that, and also discussions between people. You think about the people that won't get out of bed without their cocktail of medicines, versus the people that nearly died due to even mild medicines that they tried, and they have to go on other routes, but they're being forced to take this medication. So now they're like, we're going to take the whole thing down. If you won't take us into your agenda, we won't take you into our agenda. It's kind of like those mutual rebellious arguments between parties. One that want to go with the that kind of like the counter rebel. Oh, psychiatry is nothing. Oh, okay, but what about work? What about the people who do want to take these type of medications? Oh, and what about the people who died? What about the scientists that were silenced? Yes, but what are you going to do for work? And these people need their housing. Yeah, you need to do some certain other things. Oh, you have 15-minute city. Well, 15-minute city is not having your feet on the soil, and so on and so forth. We're going to have these arguments a lot. When it comes to robots and AI, we're going to have some sort of liquidity, or we're going to have AI trying to get into the medical field again. So AI diagnosis and the arguments with that, or people saying, oh, there is this DNA test that you can do, but this DNA test is corrupt. Is it the algorithm? Is it intentionally corrupt? And a person kind of like facing their own intuition about their body, and the science kind of like, science knows more than you about you. And sometimes science does have an insight, so it's like another point of view. And sometimes it's quite important to listen to the patient. You want to listen to the patient intuition if you want to be addressing things and real things. So that's the new moon. There is a crisis situation that sparks a new beginning. It's unexpected conflict between the structured and the alternative. But alternative is more like anti-structure. Okay, don't expect it to be like shamans and healers versus, no, not at all. It's structure versus anti-structure. And that is the argument. February 24th is the full moon in Virgo. Full moon in Virgo. Full moons are about releasing stuff. So it's not about we're beginning a cycle. It's more like we are getting to the fruit, to the full bloom of a cycle, and then we're letting go. So this is Sun opposing moon, 5 degrees Pisces and Virgo. Sun is in conjunction with both Mercury and Saturn. So we are about to open a new Sun-Saturn cycle. And yet another cycle is about to be opened as the moon is decreasing. So here we have Jupiter to kind of mitigate this from 10 degrees Taurus. And Jupiter is squaring Mars. So Jupiter is squaring Mars in the background, and the moon trining Jupiter. So we're going to be activating Mars square Jupiter, Mars and Venus square Jupiter. Venus 9 degrees Aquarius, Mars 8 degrees, and Pluto on the 1 degree. So Pluto moved 1 degree, kind of like a turtle. And that means that we have a conflictual, okay, philosophically conflictual, religiously conflictual, uh, religious war, science and religious at war, but also religious war that is culminating right now. And and the good news is that it's just like there is a conflict sparking up, but the moon will be decreasing afterwards. So yes, it is happening in Taurus land, Taurus, Belgium, Ukraine, Israel, more Taurus related countries, also to do with Aquarius and Virgo Pisces. The Virgo Pisces axis is PLO versus Hamas in the region of kind of like the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, which is Palestine, okay, and so on and so forth. So that's still on. And it's going to be there's going to be a technological twist to this one. Remember, at this time, Israel is supposed to still be speaking and being accused in The Hague. We don't know what more stuff is, like what is going to develop there. And we kind of seen Israel instead of seeing the who and the with. And so they're trying to keep it that way. What will be the moves that will be made there? We don't know. But then there's going to be a letting go. We also know that Israel is interested in suing Hamas for war crimes for the 7th of October. Okay, so this is a massacre. Okay, it is a very, yeah, regardless of who founded what, we understand that those happenings are going to are also on the table. And so there's some sort of a conflict here, and this conflict has a scientific nature. And we're not talking about evidence per se, we're talking about the science of something, okay? The science of bloodlines, the science, yes, it can have to do with like the rape of women there. But beyond that, you think about many things that Israel was swiping under the rug are going to come up, as well as many things that Palestine was swiping under the rug are going to come up. Okay. If people say it's very difficult to prove this, to prove that, there are footages, okay, spread by Hamas and filmed by Hamas. I do not recommend you to watch this. You might end up volitionally in an asylum, like, you know, and go bunkers. And it's not like the medicine world can right now is efficient, but it was like there are evidence. What evidence, what stuff are we going to see brought from Hamas? Okay, and there would also be the questioning of AIs and deep fakes and blood stuff, like DNA stuff. Okay, Israel and DNA, everything, you know, is going to come up. Okay, the DNA bloodline of Mars' ruling blood, but it's also a weapon against women, women combatants as well. Okay, the conjoining of them, or women intelligence, real estate crimes against women, and the science and technology, you're using science and technology in real estate crimes. Yes, Saturn is still in Pisces here with the Sun and Mercury, 9 degrees Pisces. So we're talking about medical crimes against women, and maybe some things exposed. And that is on the axis of both Palestine and Israel. Okay, So any Palestinians, people working in the healthcare system, for example, in Israel, might be exposed. Um, and I know that there is, like, I know that such things exist, and I know it's kind of like the who and with, but it's very easy to blame it on the local to keep from other layers from being inspected. And so there's going to be a tremendous effort to point, and it's going to be quite a successful one, to point the spotlight at Israel-Palestine conflict, and kind of like the scientific healthcare stuff involved in that. That's what I see on a mundane level. Okay, on a personal level, you are thinking about how does what is the role of humanity in my personal relational problems? Okay, and the role of religion. Okay, for example, think about the Madonna horse conflict. Okay, oh, you might find yourself as like, I like to sleep with this woman, but when I sleep with this woman, I can no longer think about her as kind of like a serious partner because of the things we do sexually, like you have a blowjob, I don't know, like, come on, where's the problem? But it's kind of like, it's not the problem, but there is something you're dealing with. So what is the role of fundamentalist religion or cultists in saying that? Okay, one thing that Nature used to talk a lot about was semen retention, and how semen retention is kind of like emphasized as kind of like, you must do semen retention, otherwise you're not spiritual, you're not this, you're not that, you're not that. It's kind of like, you can be spiritual and do lovely things with magic and do lovely things with sex and jerk off, okay, and ejaculate. It doesn't make you less spiritual. And if you connect your heart, it doesn't even decrease your energy, which is the first time I actually heard about this. We have this kind of like things that we thought are known, but once you break a certain barrier of religious trauma or occultist trauma around your sexuality, you can discover that, oh, I can ejaculate and still feel energetic. I didn't know that. And maybe it's true to some cases, maybe not. So you might be just thinking about those type of things in your life. Okay, how has the way that for example, how I'm afraid, I saw so many men have all these weird ideas around women, and I understand that when I was recoiling from men, even though I have sex positive ideas and I don't think badly of men, and I give every person kind of like not only the benefit of the doubt. I used to meet the person, I realized that, oh, maybe my body's being intelligent, it has been feeling all of this, and it seemed like, this is so weird. Is it my trauma? No, it's theirs. They're in no way ready because they're brainwashed with religious trauma. They're not to blame for that. But then as they try to approach me, they don't really give me the vibe that opens me up to be intimate. And then I get traumatized, and now both of us have to do this work. Okay, the role of science and technology that serves relationships, sexual relationships, and you think about also the interactions of drugs and sexuality. All of those things can be a topic of discussion for you. Technology and art, or so you think about, yes, but here this Mars and Venus is very much intimacy, sexuality, and technology, and the effect of the whole effect of humanity, what's going on in the world at large. Okay, some people have a baby boom around this time because they're actually feeling sexually aroused and can experience sexual shame because they feel sexually aroused at these stressful times. Some people feel actually the desire to have children for after all the deaths that are happening in the world, to revivify the earth. And some people cannot touch a person from a stool with a stick because this thing is affecting them. And so you can think about what is happening in the world at large. Sex with aliens can be something that you might be interested in. Is there a sex robot? And so on and so forth. All that stuff. Or can I feel what my partner feels during orgasm? All of that stuff is also back. So it's not just like war crimes and medical welfare, but it's also those type of cool things. Um, and Venus Mars is very much relationships, sexuality, intimacy, within technology and drugs, stuff like that. So yeah, we got to the lunations. Um, Now let's take a look at some aspects. I'm going to talk about the difficult stuff. So we talked about the Sun conjuncting Saturn. This happens February 28th. February 8th, Sun is squaring Uranus. And it's not a super harsh thing. It's happening from 19 degrees Aquarius. And that is a little bit of a crisis point. Okay? It's a dramatic collision. Okay, there's a conflict. Somebody's ego is clashing with somebody's insights. Okay, somebody's ego is clashing with somebody's insights. And sometimes you cannot, you won't even pay attention until after it happens because it's a Uranus quality. Okay. So sometimes, and Uranus is in a Venus sign, there's just sudden expression of values, and then the Sun kind of has a counterpoint to that, is critical towards that. The ruler of the Sun is in Pisces, and the ruler of Saturn is in Taurus. So you're going to be circumventing the same issue from different points of view. I think a person that has this aspect with me in synastry, but with them having the Uranus in Aquarius and me having the Sun in Taurus, well, we had like a couple of collisions like that, where I would pay emphasis on like willing consent or housing the homeless, and they would pay more attention to like privilege or white privilege, or people think that they are entitled to many things, and so on and so forth, which is more like a Saturn quality. Is like, you're not entitled to anything, you need to learn how nature works and works with it, which is one sort of intelligence. And then squaring the Sun in the sense of well, validation. Okay, Venus, okay, the validation, giving place, okay, having territory, so people can make good decisions and being exposed to this nervous system stuff. And so we're going to have such argument, but now with the Sun in Aquarius, so it's going to be the performer, the leader of a revolution, and they want to, let's say, cancel social welfare. Okay, and then Uranus in Taurus is going to be that, where's Venus in Capricorn? So Venus in Taurus is going to be that elderly woman that will say, without my pension, I am in the street in human trafficking. What can I do? Okay, and with that, I have a quality of life. It's a simple life, but this is a good life. Okay, and so we have this collision, and of course, she's not going to say it like that. It's Uranus, okay? It's Uranus. It's like, of course you want this, because what do you do after you go outside after you work? Do you go to prostitutes and you want them to be cheaper? It's not going to be cheaper. They're going to slit your throat. Okay? So that is a kind of a conversation that we can be having with this. Okay? It's kind of like, I don't feel like funding for all these parasites and all these that and all these that. It's like, nobody is asking for you. Just buy an album, pay for the music you listen to, and then they won't be in the street. Think about Hitler. Think about what if people would buy his paintings and that money would be sufficient for him to even rent a nice condo. 6 million just Jews. But I don't know how many billions people. Just if you interfered in just this one, okay, that's the convo, okay. And Uranus Taurus is very much like, hey, let's talk about Hitler. What if people will buy his nice nature paintings? And that's that. Okay. This is exactly the type of arguments we're going to be having. And Sun in Aquarius, kind of a leader that wants to have something good for humanity. And that is, could see Taurus as this luxurious person that is maybe way too craving of material stability. And Uranus is like, well, this is how I balance my nervous system. I'm supposed to walk on the land. Do you want me to walk on your land? Yeah, I don't mind, but I'm living in the city. We don't have land. Well, I need land. Here, if I walk on somebody else's land, I get shot. Well, this is private property. We can abolish all private property. Yeah, but that would mean that they would have to accept me as a woman in a situation where they are all like Orthodox people that think that women should be in the kitchen. I could be in the kitchen, they would all die. And then it would blame it on me. It could be a mistake. Okay, those kind of conversation, because Saturn is trying to bring something new, but it's like completely blind about all the other things. We're still Saturn, still of the old, and Taurus is also of the old. Okay, it's a fixed earth sign. So this is a transient aspect, but it's a hard aspect. As with any hard aspect between inner planets and outer planets, now because of the merit of Uranus is in Venus sign, okay? Venus is in Capricorn, yeah? And so it's less risky, but money can fly out of the pocket as a rebellious trick. I'm going to buy these stocks now. Now that you're arguing with me, I'm going to buy these stocks now. And what are these stocks? Are they medical related? Are they drug related? Okay, and so on and so forth. This is a bit of a rebellious purchase. So a rebellious purchase as a result of an ego conflict can absolutely happen at this time. Now let's talk about, well, we're going to have Mercury square Jupiter on February 10th. It's more like philosophy versus applied science, okay? What I believe in versus the word that I say. Mercury is going to square Uranus on February 17th. This is, mark the calendar, money is going to fly out of the pocket. Now, what you're going to be spending on, first of all, again, it's the same 19 degrees Aquarius. You're going to be investing in something, okay? You might decide that you want the sci-fi writer in the street to make money, and you use your allowance from your parents, or because it's children, or so it's like money that you're not supposed to spend on that, and make a rebellious purchase on the art that this homeless person makes, and they can be brilliant. Okay, so money is going to fly out of the pocket, and it's going to be a sudden, rebellious, unexpected type of purchase. Okay, 17th February, save the wallets, save the day. This is, and yes, words can fly out of your mouth as well, and those words will be of a rebellious nature, can invoke a controversy. You can want to say something and you kind of are provocative in language more so than you mean, but you might even mean it. It's a fuck it moment, okay, where you just say things in the unnicest way. that you can possibly imagine. And that can cause a disconnect or a miscommunication. Okay, you're aggravated at something. You may have good reasoning. Okay, you may have maybe right in your argument. Um, but this is where it can go a little bit or a lot provocative, and you could probably, under a different aspect like a sextile or a trine, be saying those very same things, but in a way that is more receptive to the ear. Your acting, your strategy or not strategy is agent provocateur. And that is something to consider in your relations. There can also be unexpected, shocking discoveries, a eureka as well. Okay, so it's unsettling. Don't expect to be sleeping very much. Same with the sun. Don't expect to be sleeping very well. Okay, the sun square happens in February 8th. This one, February 17th. Yeah, the conjunction with Saturn, February 28th. We talked about this. Now let's talk about Venus. So, Venus. Well, she's going to be squaring Chiron February 5. And this is another mark your wallets. Okay, if you have any problems of it's very difficult to say emotional spending, but yes, I will, because even though Venus is in Capricorn, Saturn ruled, Saturn is in Pisces. And so the square with Chiron, which is also Mars is exalted, Venus' way to deal with a wounding can be okay, let's eat something sweet. Let's go to a restaurant. And Venus Capricorn likes particular things and is high maintenance. Okay, if you have a fight with your partner and your partner is represented by this Capricorn Venus, prepare your wallets. And this is early, this is February 5. Okay, she's gonna be dissatisfied. The only way to make it up for her is a very high class, top Michelin restaurant, or a clothing that she wants. Whatever it is that she wants, it's going to be expensive. Okay, even if it's drugs. Okay, so and there is a little bit of an ouchie there, that is the square with Chiron. Chiron is direct. So the issue that Chiron is dealing with, you've already dealt with that. Okay, Chiron is doing it again. And with Mars, it can come up with a financial initiation of some sort. You're preparing a product of some sorts. Okay, you have a patent, an innovation, or you're trying to make a move in a certain way. Or because Mars is so exalted in Capricorn, you strategize getting something more than you strategize connection. And your connection lady is unsatisfied, and it's going to be painful in the wallet. So expect that to be, prepare the money, and understand that even though it touches on like painful stuff, now you're dealing with it in a direct way, and there's so going to be some sort of with Capricorn, very likely to be material or artistic compensation. You could be finding yourself writing a poem for this young lady. You think about Beyonce and Jay-Z when she released Lemonade. Okay, it's obvious that Jay-Z was not too satisfied with the situation. She was making an album and getting paid for this. Okay, and bailing out his own investment, by the way. But also, she was making money out of this. No, I'm going to make it a story. I'm going to make it an album, and I'm going to make a tour. And I'm going to sing these songs to the whole world. Okay, this is the type of Venus we're dealing with. I know Venus of Beyonce, I think, is in Libra, but the Venus Capricorn, she's no less of And it's not a schemer, because she was wounded and she is sacrificing a lot for this relation, and you gotta show up. So you're going to literally be allocating assets to this one if it's in any way relational. If it's between you and you, you're having a purchase that is covering up of your ego. Somebody hurts your ego, your sense of individuality. Instead of lashing out at them, you take yourself to a fancy restaurant, okay? And you could probably be having a conversation about your budget if that is the case, okay? That can very well be the thing. Here we have a conversation about your budget. Maybe even you asked for this conversation, but you feel like the advice given you is touching on some subject, and instead of lashing out at the person, you ask for their help maybe. And with Saturn, Pisces can be kind of like financial help. You decide that you're not going to lash at them, you're just going to take yourself to a fancy restaurant, and that's how you deal with that. So this is Chiron. Another wallet triggering moment is the Venus squaring the nodes. Now, Venus squaring the nodes is very interesting because this is a fated relation, a fated expense, or a fated income. Depending on what it is for you, if you have like Venus rule 10th house, you could be getting a fated promotion or demotion. And this is happening on February 7th. The degree of Venus is not the best, it's the 18th degree. And but 18th degree in Aries is actually the degree of the exaltation of the sun, as per Christopher Warnock. I don't remember who was quoting. So it has an original source. It's kind of like a secondary source, but he's the one who brought it like in modern times. And so we are having a fated moment to do with relations, connections, values, assets, pleasure as well. Okay, Venus is not forgetting pleasure in Capricorn as well. It's just she actually wants a pleasure that has duration. Is very dedicated to her pleasure in the higher like octave of that. And the moon is going to be crossing over this. So this is also another prepare your wallets moment, because there's going to be some fated purchase, and Venus is ruling Ketu, so money going out of your pocket. It can be an investment, it can be something is supposed to have a healing effect on you. It can be going from what was to what you desire, and making that as a purchase. Mars is on the 25th degrees of Capricorn, exalted. Another fated argument can be symbolized by this. So everything I said about Chiron, when the Mars Venus can be also relevant here, and it's not too far from Chiron. So there's again a prepare your wallet moment, okay? And this is a fated thing. So if this expresses itself as money going out of your pocket, it's fated. You're likely to try and aim at something long term that has a healing or dream-like quality for you. So it can be, it's going to be an it can also be a fated investment that stands the test of time, or at least you're going to try to attempt at doing so, but it's a fated attempt. Whether it's successful or not will be decided in the future, but it has the potential. In any case, this is what you want to know about this. So if you think, oh, I'm going to, keep my budget tight, keep myself kind of like, no, it's fated. Okay, it's touching on these eclipse points, and it's not about avoiding this, but about understanding that it's coming. Another big wallet moment is February 25, where Venus is squaring Jupiter. Now, this is not bad at all. Okay, Venus square Jupiter, it just means doing it way big. And she's conjuncting Mars. Mars square Jupiter is more of a problem. There are some people that would say it's big dick energy. So it could manifest as just that, but it also means that you're doing it way big. Okay, if you want to eat something, you're doing it way big. If you want to try, and here you might want to try something new, you might want to try those kind of like molecular cuisine or stuff like that. It's going to be costly. Um, and another thing is kind of like an unusual type of clothing. And again, you're doing it way big. There's a new designer that you want to look at their clothes. And oh, they also have a story that they're like domestic violence survivors. Like, I want to spend my money. Then you're like, you have no money for food for the rest of the month. But it's a doing it way big. You're optimistic about what you're doing here, and it's being cocky. The pun is a part of the manifestation of this energy. Okay, it's about being cocky. The conjunction with Mars, you're being cocky about something, and it is relational. It has to do with assets. It has to do with values, and you kind of want to party in that way, and that's not bad. And here, because it is Jupiter, it's not like an outer planet. There's a tendency to go to excess. It's very difficult to like get a hold of this energy, but it's not like it's God sent. Jupiter does represent choices that we make, but it also represents being overly optimistic. And yeah, so it's not unavoidable, but also it can be one of these points in life where you just allow yourself, and you choose to allow yourself. Okay, it's not an addiction per se. It's you're choosing to be extravagant, and you're just optimistically estimating the situation more so. So awareness can help to mitigate that more so than the outer planets. But again, don't expect it to be, saving on that Starbucks coffee today. So even if you get fired, like the news broadcaster, because they were banning, I don't know, whatever. February 27, we have also, we have the Mars perfecting this square with Jupiter. And more so than the wallet moment, it can be a wallet moment, but more so than the wallet moment, it's the BDA, okay, it's the big dick energy. It's that grand action, but it's also kind of like a religious war moment, and it's acting big. Okay, think about taking massive action. It's about taking massive action. It can even be in a good direction. You tend on, trying to bite more than you can chew with this one, but it's not fatalistic unless we're talking about like mundane interpretation. And in general, I don't predict this to be too fatalistic. Okay, just biting more than you can chew. If the wallet is involved, then you can be a little bit cocky where you shouldn't be. It's not impossible to mitigate, but also, again, don't expect it to go over your head without participating, because you're probably likely to be manifesting, the energy of the planets. So good places to take this into. Take creative action, take massive creative action. Yes, it's going to be quality, but you can. Taurus is also resourcefulness, and you can find a new way to create something, to express yourself artistically, to combine science and philosophy in a way that is beautiful for the eye. Those are great ways that you can work with this energy if it's possible and accessible for you. All in all, I think we're pretty done with the tough times. It is an okay month, okay? It's not it's not particularly reflective. And this is where, you know, what I'm most concerned about February is because as of 27 January, all the planets are going direct. February, when those, you know, when the Sun Uranus arrives, when Venus squares when Venus squares the nodes or squares Chiron, or when we don't get a lot of too hard, you know, it's not like December and even January when we have all these squares to Neptune. We go Mercury, Mars, Sun, Venus, and then you kind of like looking for the pennies in your wallets, and then they tell you we accept all coins except for these 10 cents, and that's what you got in your wallet. Okay, that's what you got left with after this, and you don't regret any of the purchase, you just wish you had more money. But this one, I'm not concerned. It's not like we have a hard time so much so as there's just this stagnant energy crying to move forward, even without hard aspects. Okay, if you think about, sometimes you've been on a tight budget simply because you couldn't move yourself, you couldn't scrape yourself off of the bed, you couldn't clean your house, you couldn't make this conversation, and now you just want to be pushing forwards. It's a spark of energy. Then you're not going to be paying too much attention. Okay, you're going out of a moment of stagnation. You want to move forward. You want to move forward. And this is where things can get a little bit out of hand, whether it's fiscally, whether it's emotionally, whether it's in terms of the actions that you take. You're going to be taking massive actions this month. And it's not a bad thing, not at all even, but definitely it leaves some things to be corrected when we're going to get the April season, where we're going to get both the retrogrades and the eclipses. So we are likely to make some fated gaps. I'm not saying mistakes, but evidently leave some gaps that need to be corrected. Okay, and to give kind of like a more concrete example, let's say you needed to do your taxes, you needed to clean your house, you needed to speak with your landlord, you needed to work on the garden, and February came and you went all in, started dating people, going to restaurants, doing all the things you weren't doing. Okay, you understand that you're so excited to go on with things, and your house is still kind of like dirty, and that conversation was haphazardous, they all you wanted to say, and all these things are going to be met again during the retrograde season. It's not something that is all that avoidable. Okay, it's very difficult for you to slow down because you have been slowing down. You're kind of like, I'm sick of renovating. I'm sick of fine editing. I'm sick of, looking at every little bit things. I'm sick of planning. Enough planning. Let's take action, and you're going to be taking massive action. That's okay. You're scheduled to do so. And you've sometimes probably even consciously choosing to just say, okay, I've dealt with all of that. I need a vacay. Okay, and we're in the middle of a world war, and the banks are collapsing, and tourism is going to still be a business. Okay, tourism related business are going to still yield, very likely so. So do not So we are restaurants, and no matter what COVID is going to break in, we're going to find our way around it. And COVID is making a comeback because the emergency rules in some countries are going to be expiring around this time. And so we're going to suddenly see a spike of some new variant or something like this. Not too concerned about this. And you see that people won't be, if somebody will try to say the word lockdown, they will become compost for the roses by the masses. People have had enough, okay? And people have also had enough considering people and things. And this is why it's not necessarily that good for like long-term relationships or anything of that sort. We don't have like, it doesn't mean that it cannot happen. It just means that kind of like you're sick of standing, taking two steps backwards, one step forward, two steps backwards. You're moving forward. You don't care what's been left behind you now, because you have extinguished your capacity to go over this. Okay. So this is why I'm saying financially, banks are going to be collapsing and people are going to be doom spending. And it's not by the merit of the hard aspect so much as it's just the release from stagnation. Okay? So if you're thinking, oh, all the planets are going to move direct, I'm going to open a saving account. I'm not saying it's impossible, but you got to be really oriented towards that, because the odds are going to go against you. The odds are going to go that you want to live, you want to vacate, you want to date, you want to eat, you want to fuck, you want to hug, you want to adopt a pet, you want to start a new hobby. You understand, well, if the world is ending, then at least I will so and so and so. You're doom spending. And it's by design, okay? You're designed to do so. And the many people that capitalize on that can wait a second. Even if you've been like the best activist in the world, consumerism, I've been talking a lot about consumerism in 2024 with Rao in Aries. This is a month of consumerism. And also, if you're like a business owner and you say, I want to capitalize on this consumerism, my darling, you will be on a vacay somewhere, not even able to pick up a call from any client unless they're like, you found them attractive or something. That's not exactly. I would say we're not going to be making business. But I definitely say if you try to strategize this month, yes, Mars will still be in Capricorn for a significant amount of the time, and it will apply to sextile Neptune. It is more by the spirit of luck and fatedness and some good strategy that meets it that you'll be doing these things, and it will more be like those old tricks that you've forgotten. Now you're demonstrating them even effortlessly out of a state of flow. And just by that, you don't miss out on the chances. It's going to be more your flamboyant desire to be active, and you're not going to be thinking too much about the details. Like if you, hey, I want to do business. Hey, I want to make money. Okay, and then opportunity meets a readiness. Yes, so you are ready, but it's not like you can take it now to the nitty gritty stuff, and you're gonna be redoing that as of April with eclipses, with Jupiter Uranus on degrees that that your whole system, all of the bodies, okay, the energy body, the physical body, the emotional body, spiritual body, all of your bodies know that, and that's why you're allowing yourself this flexing out. Okay, if the purchases that you've been making in December, January, the investments, okay, the moves you've been making have been about a deep longing and desire. Now some opportunities come on the way to more realistically incarnate that. They still have to be flamboyant, okay? They still have to greet you with opportunity. And they still have to evoke your genuine passion to life. Because and this is something that can be the great thing about this month, is the genuine passion to life is going to be widely expressed amidst of, you know, discussion about war crimes, or you might even be a refugee and you're like, somebody gives you, I don't know, $10 and you're like, I'm gonna go to a restaurant. Okay, it's not about making the smart fiscal decision. It's about, I want to live this life today. I'm entitled to life. And this consumerism, this dinner, this chocolate, this not having to look at who made this brand, even though all of these maybe are a part of why it is what's happening, I want to live this life. I want to eat. I want to vacay. I want to experience. I want to try on the brand clothes. Those things you weren't doing, especially with Venus square in the notes. And you understand that sometimes the things you weren't expecting, they stand the test of time. And you're going to be making some unexpected decisions. Also with where you're investing your energy, your money, your connections, and so on and so forth. So thank you for watching.